Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of Tuesday, March 11th. We'll call this meeting to order. In our agenda for this evening, number 2 item says that we would exit executive session, but we weren't actually in executive session, so that's a bit of a typo. And then moving on past that, we'll start every meeting, we'll start this meeting like we do always with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just in case that beginning part wasn't recorded, I will say we just happened to call the meeting to order and said that we, even though it says that we were executive session, we actually weren't in executive session, so that's a bit of a typo. Okay, so move on to reading of the mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident lifelong learners, who are respectful, caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing a rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Item 5 in our agenda is public comment. See if there's anybody in the studio for public comment. It doesn't appear as though there is. Is there anyone on Zoom? And WCAT says no. Thank you. Item number 6 would be a consent agenda, but we do not have one of those, so we can buzz right by to budget items with Ms. Fagman.
Great. So tonight you have the financial reports from July 1st, 2024 till February 28th, 2025. As you can see, we have an available balance of just over $2 million, which equates to about a 4% budget available for the rest of this year. We are still currently in a budget freeze for the local budget. We are still assessing these accounts as we are going through the budget process for next year as well. So that's where we are with the local budget. As you can see, our grants have really been spent down for this year. Grants are entitlements that must be spent before June 30th. So we have about $143,000 left of that. The majority of that is the METCO grant. And then the revolving accounts. So as you can see, the revolving accounts is just a little over $3 million, with the bulk of that being the food service program. Yet we are still making some capital purchases from food services. Some lunch tables for the Galvin School were purchased over February break, so that has yet to hit this account. So you'll see that declining over the next couple of months as well. But that's where we stand for our accounts through February. If anyone has any questions, we can talk about that.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're in good shape. So the next, we have 2 payrolls for February. We have a motion.
Move that the school committee approve payroll warrants 34 and 36.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you.
We also have a gift tonight to be accepted by school committee. It is a gift of $2,500 from the Savings Bank for Parent University, which just happened over last weekend. We have a motion?
Yep. Move that the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $2,500 from the Savings Bank Parent University 2025.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, although I would just say thank you to the Savings Bank for helping fund Parent University. It is always a great event. So it's nice to have community sponsors for that. So thank you to them. Those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.
That is it for budget. Well, for budget items. For number 7.
Thank you.
We're done with the budget?
It's not it for
For
budget.
the that's for the current budget.
Dr. Lyons, before I move on to you, I'm going to move on to our student advisors, because I think Shay was like, what the heck, you missed me. and I'm Ed. So if you two wouldn't mind maybe just introducing yourselves again, and then give us the lay of the land as it exists at the high school.
Hi, my name is Ahmed Ahmed. I'm a senior at the high school.
My name is Shay Sunken. I am also a senior at Wakefield High School.
And with our updates today, we'll start with academics. So, Mr. Pavey and Miss Messier arranged for students to hear from 97-year-old Holocaust survivor Helga Melmed. Miss Melmed shared her stories from her deportation to Riga Ghetto to the horrors of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen.
Next, to go on to athletics. Wakefield High School Jazz Ensemble earned a gold medal at the District Jazz Festival in Reading on March 5th. They now move on to the state finals on Saturday, March 22nd at Norwood High School.
Galvin Middle School and Wakefield High School music departments are hosting the Northeast District Junior Festival this week at Galvin Middle School. Over 400 musicians from grades 7 through 9 will be practicing on Wednesday and Friday and performing in 2 concerts on Saturday at the Galvin Auditorium.
And our winter season has officially concluded. Our boys and girls basketball programs, as well as our boys hockey team, all qualified for the postseason state tournament. Big shout out to our wrestling program, who finished second as a team at the Division III state tournament. Individually, Kip King and junior Adam Lamb won their respective state titles in their weight class. Senior Tegan Norton was also a state championship for the girls' side of the bracket.
Spring sports will begin on Monday, March 17th, and we are excited to get going. As of earlier this week, we are just over 300 student athletes who are registered and signed up for tryouts and practices.
All games and matches will begin on Tuesday, April 1st, and all up-to-date schedules will be found on Arbiter Live through athletic website.
Our unified basketball season will also begin around April 1st, and this year's Hoopapalooza, which is the unified basketball jamboree for the Middlesex League, will be played at the Galvin Middle School on Tuesday, May 20th, with the rain date of Thursday, May 22nd.
And then for other school news and timely happenings, this Friday we have an early release day.
Friday is also the junior prom at the Black Swan in Georgetown.
And this Saturday is the senior show at 7 p.m. Students and teachers $10 and adults $20.
And then Thursday, March 20th, we will be having our annual Unity Day at Wakefield Memorial High School. This year's keynote speaker, Jennifer DeLone, is the award-winning author of young adult novel Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, an essay collection, White Space, Essays on Culture, Race, and Writing.
And that's all for us.
That was brilliant. That was a lot.
Yeah.
You guys are like newscasters. Any questions for our youth advisors? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you.
And now, moving on. Item number 8, Dr. Lyons.
Yeah, just a few comments and updates to our student ambassadors, Shay and Ahmed. Thank you. Really nice job.
Thank
right?
you.
It's before you started your comments this evening. I was looking at the our mission statement around the skills and things we want for our graduates. Yeah, I know you're not graduates yet, and I don't want to rush that, but you guys are remarkably skilled, and you do a really nice job. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Nice job. Other updates. This past Saturday, we had Parent University. We had a really, I think, a great turnout. I want to say we had close to 100 parents, and I want to say we had probably 60 children in Wakefield Academy, and so we're really pleased to get back and kind of and meeting face to face. I feel like Zoom has its qualities and its space, but being able to talk to people face to face, I really think is a luxury. And we're grateful to be able to share what we're doing in the district. And special thanks to all of our faculty and staff that participated, and as well to Kara, who had a significant role in planning and also bringing her kind of governance leadership group over to help with the presentations as well. So thank you. This is a big meeting for us. This is the budget. This is kind of like we start doing this work in October, and then we kind of presented the budget this evening, which is essentially the superintendent's or the administration's budget that we are presenting to school committee. Our plan then is next week we will have kind of a public meeting, public hearing, to allow anyone that has any input on the budget that we're presenting to come in and provide feedback to both the administration and school committee. I'd like to start off with a video that we've created. We're trying to do some things differently this year to share information more concisely, and if people miss it, they can watch it again or watch parts of it again. So we'd like to start off with a budget video that we have worked on and had produced to help explain kind of the parts of the whole. and the work that we do in creating our budget.
In Wakefield Public Schools, our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing a rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Nothing reflects this mission more than the choices we make in our annual budget. That's why we've created this FY26 budget video to share the goals we set this year to ensure that Wakefield continues to deliver an exceptional education to our community and contributes to what makes Wakefield a great place to live and raise a family. The key progress we've delivered on these goals and the next steps we're taking to continue moving forward. The key drivers of rising costs in our budget and the steps we've taken to help address them. And a look at the numbers that we will present in our formal budget presentation and ask for the community's approval at town meeting. In Wakefield, we're committed to aligning the work we do at every level, and student achievement should be the outcome that this alignment delivers. That starts with a district instructional strategy, moves through school improvement plans and professional development, is reflected in the professional practice and learning goals of each of our teachers and students, and gets consistently delivered in the practices of each of our classrooms. And we rely on data to inform decisions at every level. With this comes 3 district goals. Quality teaching. When we give information, resources, and support to our highly skilled educators and staff, they can provide opportunities to our students to engage work at their level that's culturally relevant, authentic, and interactive. A rich and challenging curriculum. When our students have access to high-quality instructional materials that are consistent and the right level, and we use the right measurements to track their progress, they'll achieve. And individualized student learning. When we use the right intervention and supports, based on the right observations and data, every student will get the right opportunities to grow and feel like they belong. Here are the key signs of progress we've made on our district goals, and the next steps we're taking to continue our improvement. In quality teaching, we've implemented a differentiated professional development plan and established instructional leadership teams, along with revamping our mentor program for teachers new to WPS. Our exceptional curriculum leadership structure allows for in-depth coaching and support across all content areas, as well as instructional leadership teams at all levels to support this work. Next, we're working to maintain teacher retention rates, and our curriculum leadership structure will continue to support teaching and learning at all levels. In curriculum, we've done extensive work aligning and implementing across all content areas, including 5 years of illustrative math, 2 years of EL education as our core literacy program, including a focus on developing our students' foundational skills. And we paid for it with grant funding. This flows through our older grade 5 through 12 learners as they grow. We're also reviewing curriculum, completing a science review with world language, health, and physical education in progress. We've also improved student data collection, progress monitoring, and systems to intervene when students need more support. Another state grant is supporting kindergarten acceleration academies each summer. And we're working with Wakefield Academy to offer after-school and summer opportunities to boost students just shy of meeting grade level targets. Next, we'll look to sustain these programs and begin a review of social studies curriculum. And in individualized student learning, we've created WIN blocks, which stand for What I Need, to make sure students have access to both intervention and acceleration opportunities. Another grant helped us develop a dyslexia action plan and aligned our schedules so interventions can happen around math and literacy. We've updated our district curriculum accommodation plan with clear expectations for all learners. We're developing programming for our increasing numbers of multilingual learners, improving accessibility for all learners. Title III grants helped us increase staff, resources, and summer programming for multilingual learners. We've also kept our focus on special education to control out-of-district costs by developing in-district programs with the academic, social, and behavioral supports to serve our students here in Wakefield. Aligning these programs delivers consistency for our students and our families. Next, we're building out our professional development for the next school year to deliver more value to these efforts. Wakefield Public Schools' FY26 budget demonstrates 4 key areas where costs continue to rise for public school districts across our region. The first cost driver is the biggest for any public school district: personnel. Our personnel costs rose by $2.6 million over last year's budget, a 5.15% increase to the local budget. This is the result of the new teacher contract, and not just for our highly skilled educators. We're currently negotiating with our 6 other collective bargaining units, administrators, Unit C, clerical, custodial, cafeteria, and traffic supervisors. Once settled, all of these contracts put our district on a more sustainable and predictable financial path after a period of inflation and uncertainty, while helping us retain our current teachers and staff and attract new employees to WPS. We know continuity is a demonstrated driver of student success. The other cost drivers are less predictable and less in our control. Utilities, a new transportation contract currently out for bid, and out-of-district tuitions. One commitment we've made to the town of Wakefield to help with rising costs is a 4-year plan to spend down money that accumulated in our revolving accounts during the pandemic. These are accounts like Wakefield Academy, Doyle Preschool, and the facilities revolving accounts. These accounts can only pay for expenses they generate by operating these programs like custodial overtime charges and utility costs. FY26 is the second year of this spend down. Here are the key numbers of our proposed FY26 budget. Our total local budget amounts to $55.4 million. That includes increases of 5.1% to personnel costs, 0.8% to contractual services like out-of-district tuition, utilities, and transportation. This also includes our supplies and material costs. This combined amounts to a 5.94% increase over last year's local budget. After making progress on our district goals to deliver for our students' achievement, we believe this budget reflects the values we share to maintain Wakefield's valuable public education that attract new residents, maintain our property values, and grow our shared future. Your voice is integral to the final adoption of our FY26 budget. You can dig into every detail of the budget on our website, wpsk12.org. Navigate to the Central and Business Office/Budgets tab on the homepage, then select Budget Documents. We'll deliver the budget presentation to School Committee March 11th, and welcome your feedback in the public input session at School Committee on March 18th. And we hope you'll join us for town meeting on Monday, May the 5th.
Yeah, so we're trying some different things this year to communicate our budget. So the video is one of the things that we've changed. And just so we have 9 slides to summarize other work that we've been doing in a number of different areas to further talk about cost drivers and to also create a context and represent the work that we've done, the feedback that we've gotten from the different areas and stakeholders, but also to really qualify kind of the budget, the increase that we're asking for. So before I jump into the slide deck, I just want to be clear in our communication. For the last 6 years, our budget has been in the 5% range. And so the reason our tax levy has been less than that is because the additional monies that has kind of been provided to us came to us via the town. So from back in 21, we got $400,000 from ARPA, and then we got $300,000 the following year, and so we got additional monies that came in separate from the tax levy, which allowed us to kind of operate with the budget that we needed, but also to minimize that burden on the kind of the community and on the amount of the budget or the taxes levy that we were asking for. So that was a positive. As those monies decreased and kind of stopped, we have now we've continued to kind of replicate that strategy through the use of our revolving funds, right? So we've added kind of what we call a budget offset, and Christine can talk more about this, from our revolving accounts to above and beyond to bring our budget down to 5.94, 5.95, right? So I think that's just important to know. And I'll make other kind of additional information and kind of point some things out as we're going through this. So we connect. So our budget surveys, we changed our budget survey this year, and we asked family, faculty, and staff to kind of prioritize their budget priorities based on where you sit. What are your priorities? We've also tried to kind of increase or decrease the amount of time, increase the information that we're getting from the survey, while decreasing the amount of time to take the survey. We used to split this up in the kind of the areas, the 3 instructional strategy areas, quality teaching, curriculum, and then individualized student learning. We'd collect information in those 3 spaces. We'd end up with 30 slides, 10 of those slides or 12 of those slides are survey data. We're now we've changed our survey again so that people can respond more quickly and efficiently, but also to kind of itemize and kind of give their first, second, and third priorities. So families and parents have prioritized their choices, and the first priority is sustaining the investment in high quality curriculum resources. Excuse me. The second priority for parents and families are maintaining investments in social emotional learning and student well-being. We've made great kind of gains in this area. We don't want to lose the gains that we've made. And I think that's important to note because it takes years to build, moments to deconstruct, right? So the third priority for families and parents are continuing to improve our facilities. And as you can see, we're well on the way there with the high school project. We're also starting to look ahead. If it's taken us 10 years to get to where we are with the high school project, we're starting to float this question, where are we going to be 10 years from now? What conversations should we be having now so that when we are 10 years in the future, we're keeping pace with kind of the needs of facilities and school buildings for faculty, staff, and students. So the feedback that we got for the top 3 priorities for staff, staff were really resolute in kind of their feedback. Their number one concern is really the expanding needs of our multilingual learners. Students whose first language is not English, right? And so, and Kara's going to talk more about that in the next slide, but this is an area that is really, really critical, right? Because not only have the numbers increased in the district, numbers of students that have these needs, but the number doesn't equal need, right? I've made this point before. For example, when we have a student who has limited English and they are in kindergarten or first grade, it's different for them participating in their school day than it is for someone that has limited English that might be in the 8th grade or at the high school. Because the working assumption there is that students will have enough language to be able to use that language to learn the kind of the content that's being taught in math, science, English, and social studies. It doesn't always translate that way for older students. And again, we're really seeing a significant need in the ML space. The second priority highlighted by the staff that participated in the survey is expanding special education programs district-wide. Because again, we're in the space where number also doesn't equal need, and Rosie is going to talk a little bit about that as well. The third priority highlighted from faculty and staff were sustaining systems for student intervention, as well as maintaining investments in social emotional learning, so that aligns with priority 2. I think that there's this kind of grave concern that isn't always clear, but I think one of the priorities that we had a number of years ago was to really provide significant, not only improved, but greater access to counseling support for students. We've created that, and that has been a huge difference has made a huge difference for our students to participate in school, to come to school, and to also participate in their learning. It's also helped our classroom teachers because as students have been more available, emotionally available, they're more open to their learning, and they're kind of learning at a higher rate and kind of doing better than they were certainly 10 years ago. Just some kind of progress indicators and more information in regard to our multilingual learners. Thanks, Bob.
Yep, so we did want to spend some time speaking about this topic, just as it came up not only on our survey data, but at every staff forum that we held. We held budget forums, Rosie, Doug, Christine, myself, at each of the schools, and it was a talking point across all levels that this was an increasing need. Again, similar to what Doug said, not only based on number of students enrolled, which you can see from the slide that we've had a 48% increase over the last 4 years, just looking at those numbers, but also just really wanting to do this work well, trying to make sure that we're in compliance with expected minutes based on students' proficiency level. So students are, when they enroll, our ESLT, our multilingual learner teachers have a system in play where if the student's home language is not English, they're screened. They sometimes come in with records from other school districts, so we know what their English proficiency is. Otherwise, they're tested, and we're monitoring that year to year. And depending on that level, there is a range of service service minutes that should happen each day. That can range from 45 minutes to 135 minutes, depending on their needs. So we've been working with our multilingual learners. I'm getting used to the new acronym. I'm used to saying ESL teachers, but I'm really trying to stick with, I'm going to say ML to keep myself moving. Our ML teachers across the district, just to think creatively about scheduling. This has been, I think over the past several years too, an increasing need that we've identified, and we have increased staff, but it just hasn't been able to keep pace with the numbers. We have tried some different things in terms of service delivery. For example, I've referenced this before. We've created what we call our LEAP program at the Woodville School, where we've identified students who had that higher range of need on service delivery minutes, and we've been able to create a structure that works really well, where the students are with one of our ML teachers in the morning, getting really intensive support focused on reading, writing, listening, and speaking standards, and then also being included into first grade classroom for the afternoon. So that's worked out really well with the idea. We want to, support students early, often, intense, and set that foundation for them so that they have a strong base to build their skills and be included in future grade levels. Now, also, as Dr. Lyons mentioned too, elementary, I don't want to say it's easier in some ways, but to get students on the earlier end of things is always better. We have run into situations at our secondary level, middle and high school, where we have students enrolling with all different backgrounds, whether it's limited schooling at all, brand new to the country, and that requires us, that's not just a simple new student enrollment, go into core classes and be on your way with some differentiation. We're finding that we're needing to create new courses. We're working with our curriculum team, trying to create accessible courses to support students in their core subject areas. So that requires staffing, it requires curriculum development, and additional support there. So that's really just in terms of need. Like I said, it's across the district. We are finding that in terms of, again, being realistic about where we are from a budget standpoint after creative scheduling, we are finding that elementary was in need of an additional staff person, which we're hoping to do through reallocation. So that would create a team of 4 elementary teachers, ML teachers, to meet the needs of about 80 students district-wide. And we're going to try to make that split happen with 2 teachers splitting Dolbear Walton and 2 teachers splitting Woodville and Greenwood, because the numbers the numbers and needs shake out in a similar way. So we find that increase in staffing should help us to just, again, do the best job that we can to support the students. We're also looking at potential reallocation at high school too, to help increase service minutes there. And then last year, Meg Webb had reallocated to increase staffing at the Galvin to meet the needs of about 30 students there.
Just to be clear, and so that no one misses it, can you just talk a little bit more about reallocation and what that means?
Yep. So that whether it's through retirement, Christine, jump in if I'm getting the words, but through retirements with salary differences, maybe no longer in need of a position the way it was formerly used, and reusing that position in a different way. So budget neutral, but just redistributing an FTE.
We're not asking for any new FTEs. We're trying to live within what we have. So we know right now, currently, we know of 2 known teacher retirements for next year. So we know they're on step 12. So we know there's a gap from where they're retiring to what we're hiring. So we're going to use those funds to create this additional ML teacher at the elementary. So It's still budget neutral, but we heard this overwhelmingly, as Kara and Doug were saying, overwhelmingly throughout all of our budget conversations throughout the district, that
We're
this was
also-
a need.
Absolutely, and we're also really trying to be collaborative in our efforts too, that this isn't just the ML department working in isolation, that we're, resetting our professional development around SEI. We just did a reset of SEI stands for Sheltered English Immersion, PD, for our elementary level this past year. We're looking to do additional professional development at the secondary level. Our SEI endorsements, which is part of the teacher certification process, we've been chipping away at that for several years. We're now almost 100% endorsed across the district, where every teacher has their SEI endorsement. Now, I don't want to make it seem like that means, okay, teachers are good to go. They have their SEI endorsement. They know everything there is to know about how to support students. That's not the case. We need to continue to support through staffing, professional development, course development, curriculum resources. We're pulling our curriculum team in, as I mentioned, to support with differentiation and modification. We also have been really keeping an eye too on our systems for intervention, which was also a highlight from the staff too, and making sure that we're not saying, okay, these students are getting ML support, they're taken care of over here. We're looking at the data. We're making sure that maybe not only do they get ML support, but maybe they qualify for reading intervention, for math intervention. Putting a lot of things in place to make sure that we're meeting needs before the special education referral, so that when an ML student is referred for special education, we know that we have done everything that we can related to their language needs and academic needs, and that it's not, and we're not just saying a student is disabled where the needs might be different.
Just to add to the information, we're also looking at trying to hire bilingual faculty and staff. We've talked about having some difficulty in hiring some of our paraeducators. We've talked about developing a para academy, and that's one place where we've gotten several requests for, if possible, might we get an EL or an ML, not just an ML teacher, but an ML para that might be able to work in a classroom full-time with students that need that level of support as well. So we're really kind of pushing on all of the things that we know work to really support students. Because for districts that haven't supported multilingual learners well, what often happens is students are then, if they don't progress, they sometimes get referred to special education, right? Which is really not always appropriate, because they may not have a learning disability. It might be just a language issue that wasn't appropriately supported on the front side. And so we're really just trying to be pragmatic, trying to communicate well around this, and trying to think about things that we know can make a difference, right? And this is timely, because next up is Rosie to talk about kind of cost drivers in special education.
Yes. So this is an image that I know you guys have seen before. It really just shows the vertical alignment of our in-district programs. And you can see the ones that are in pink were new as of fiscal year 23. The language-based program at the high school was new as of fiscal year 24. And then the green are two anticipated programs just based on student enrollment at the middle school level right now, knowing when they'll be coming up to the high school, just so you can see the vertical alignment of our programs district-wide. And as I've spoken about in other meetings, we're really doing a lot of work to continue to refine our programming and our structures within each of these programs and our staffing. And really the intent is for us to be able to have families feel really confident that regardless of the age that their student might be entering into a program, that they feel confident that we have a program for them throughout all of their levels here in Wakefield Public Schools. And we just wanted to highlight that these are all of our in-district offerings, and despite all of the work that we're doing to kind of work on program development and expand and improve our programs district-wide, there still is a subset of students whose needs are so high that we're not able to service them within these programs for one reason or another. And so the next slide, which I can talk about more, goes into really the out-of-district costs, which I know are a big driver within the budget as well. So this chart also, I know I was here this academic year in October. So at that time I had showed a 2-year look back in terms of fiscal years 23 and 24, and I'm keeping FY25 this year up to date in terms of out-of-district enrollment, because that could change on any given day. And then we've also projected ahead for fiscal year 26. And so basically, as you can see, kind of highlights of this chart is that the student number of students who are out of district is staying relatively consistent. But as you can see in terms of the average cost per student and the total, that the needs of these students are rising. So that average number has certainly increased throughout the years, despite, you know, the out of district numbers not increasing dramatically. So it's really showing that the students that we're having in district, whether they're move-ins or students who are already here who are requiring a higher level of support, aren't able to be serviced within our in-district programs, and it comes at the cost of these out-of-district tuitions. I did want to note a couple of things in terms of cut and move-in laws that give districts some protection in terms of budgeting. So for example, if a student was to move into Wakefield tomorrow and they attended an out-of-district private school, the district in which they came from would continue to fund that out-of-district tuition until next fiscal year and when we would take over. But for a student who's at a collaborative school, which is a public day school, for example, if they moved into district tomorrow, because it's a public day as opposed to a private day, we would take over funding tuition at the date in which they moved into Wakefield. So there's some nuances to some of those laws there, which is why we think really strategically about how we're budgeting to ensure that we're being conservative and that we can kind of account for some of those unknown factors that are really unknown until kids move in, or even some students who might already be out of district who require higher levels of support. Maybe they need a one-to-one aid, maybe they need more related therapies, maybe they need some equipment. That would be costs that we would be accounting for within that district budget as well. Other things to note on the chart here, and I know I've spoken about this before also, is that OSD rate of inflation. So that basically is the annual increase in tuitions for private day schools that's set by the state. And as you can see in fiscal year 24, there was a really high increase than really we've ever seen before. It usually would hover over 3% each year. And then when fiscal year 24 hit, you can see that it was 14%. And so I noticed anecdotally from talking to other special ed directors, reading about things within the news, that unexpected, really high increase of 14%, some towns really struggled to account for that cost in that fiscal year. I think we were able to absorb the cost of that 15% within our local budget that year without having to go back to the town, without having to look at like the Special Education Stabilization Fund. And I think I obviously credit a lot of that to Christine's work in terms of the budget and everything that she's taught me since coming here about how to budget appropriately, really looking at our two revenue sources that are here at the bottom, which are really the local budget and circuit breaker. So I know I've spoken when I was here in October also about more information about circuit breaker, but it really is just wanting to highlight that this is not an example of a revolving account that it spoke about in the video in the beginning, like Doyle would be an example of that, or athletics. But this is a specific special education revenue account that we can only use for out-of-district costs. So those are really the two main things that two revenue sources that we use to fund these out-of-district costs, in addition to all of our in-district programming that you see on the prior slide. Contracted services would be included in that as well.
Rosie, if I could just chime in.
Yeah.
I know this is a real topic of conversation because we do two things. We ask the town, there is a local appropriation for special education, but we also do have circuit breaker. But historically, when we are doing the budget presentation and putting the budget together, we only know our current circuit breaker. So we use an assumption that it's going to be level funded. Now that's depending on the state. We're hoping that it's still something the state will continue to fund, but that is still an unknown. The other thing that we do here in Wakefield that helps us weather these increases is we prepay. I think you've heard us talk about prepaying 3 months of special education out-of-district tuitions that usually cover July, August, and September, the first 3 months of the next fiscal year. That's really important to us because we factor that in to when we know we're going from 4.3 to 5.1, 5.2, how are we going to afford that? So Rosie and I kind of brainstorm about where she is right now, what the local budget can afford, if there's any delta, if there's any gap, then we can use that to prepay so it will reduce the amount that we're asking the town to fund for the next fiscal year. We're still going to need that money, but if we feel if we cross 2 fiscal years, it lessens the burden on the tax levy. So it's lessening the burden of what we're asking the town of Wakefield to fund. We'll still have to come up with that 5.2, but if we cross 2 fiscal years, it's not as large of a jump. And we're always well aware that we need to keep a balance in that circuit breaker. We're allowed to carry up to 1 full year of what a full circuit breaker would be, but that's usually a luxury for most districts. We're trying our best to keep that amount, because we need to weather the storm if we get a large amount of people who are moving into Wakefield and that require these services. We don't want to have to go back to town meeting or ask for an additional appropriation. So those are really 2 strategies that we've been using for the past 6 years about how to fund this ever-growing, it's really a big driver, cost driver for our budget. So just wanted to stress on that.
Thanks, Doug. Holt, can you
Okay.
just wait here for a moment?
Mhm.
Rosie, can you talk a little bit about the practice of passing through costs? So even though, there was a big jump in FY '24, the way that private placements are passing through costs in '25 and '26, based on personnel, meaning adding staff to a student who was coming to a program, as well as transportation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of the main ones. A lot of the out-of-district schools also, even when we have students, just it really said a little bit, who we know require an out-of-district placement, we're even struggling to get them secured into a place because they're struggling with things like staffing, as Doug had just mentioned. So, so that gets passed along to us as a district, because they might need to increase staffing for students who are just a higher need population than even the out-of-district schools have had historically. I can see kind of when I send referrals, a shift in kind of the population that they're taking on now really looks different than it has in the past. So that's certainly one way in terms of students needing additional staffing, related therapies that students might need, and certainly out-of-district transportation is a big factor as well. And even students who require monitor on a van, that's another cost. Some students who might require a nurse on their van instead of just a monitor, the nurse comes at a higher cost than just the monitor would, or it's just a student who doesn't require anyone being with them also on the van. So there's a lot of different factors based on each student's needs, what school they're going to, that could increase the costs pending what they need.
So the other important piece here that's important to our viewing public to know, as school committee to know, and to really emphasize, is that the circuit breaker reimbursement comes the year after, right? So there's a 1-year delay, and it does not kind of refund or replenish, does not kind of come at 100% kind of reimbursement. It comes at 75%, right? So this isn't a 1-for-1. And about 4 years ago, we saw them kind of cut back that 75% to 65% and just hold some money for about 60 days, which kind of threw everyone for a loop, because there was real concern about, will that money ever come? Or what do we do? Or how do we make ends meet? And I make note of that because there's some similar things happening right now at the federal government. We can talk more about that at the end. So increasing cost drivers, as you saw in the video, just for our kind of salary increases, we've settled the teacher contract, which we're really pleased about, right? We always wish we could give more, because our teachers do really an amazing job, but we settled, I think, a very competitive contract. The increases in salaries this year put us at 5.15%, just as a starting point. So one of the things, and I want to give a lot of credit to Christine, one of the things that Christine has done is kind of created this hybrid kind of budget where increases that where we need increases, which is really labor, that has happened. But in anything else that could be level funded, right, is level funded. So it's kind of this hybrid, level service, while also taking on additional costs that we've committed to, right? And so this is the kind of the budget that we're moving forward. But the salary increases, or the drivers here, are 5.15% increase overall for FY25. There's an increase in utilities. We have a new transportation contract with NRT. NRT, no surprise, is the only bidder for our bus contract. No one else is kind of willing to kind of throw their hat in the ring, and we understand that. but it raises other questions as well, just about kind of sustaining the increases but also kind of maintaining relationships, et cetera. Out-of-district costs and out-of-district tuitions. There's an increase of $205,000 over last year's budget. And so that's a big piece. And that number is somewhat fluid, right? We're working, and Rosie's working with teachers and families to, again, keep kids in district. So as we're trying to do that, if a family or a student we're serving them in district, but if we get to a point where, Rosie used an important word, they have to have confidence that we have programs that can meet their needs. If kind of we reach a break point where the family doesn't feel confident and we can't kind of meet a student's needs and they're going out of district, that number would change, right? So just to be clear. Want to talk about
I can speak to revolving. So we know for the past couple of budget seasons, revolving accounts has been a real topic of conversation in the town because it's a revenue stream to Wakefield Public Schools. I like to say that this budget is an all funds budget. So what does that mean? We look, when we start in the fall, we look at all revenues coming into Wakefield Public Schools. We look at grants, we look at revolving accounts, we look at circuit breaker, we look at the town local appropriation. So we know what revenue streams are coming in. And then we start our cost analysis about the 7 bargaining units that we have, and then we kind of build from there. But what we've decided to do, like since the pandemic, our balances in revolving accounts have changed. During the pandemic, not all programs were able to be accessible from our families. We weren't charging athletic fees. We were having hybrid schedules. Wakefield Academy saw dramatic increases because people needed more childcare. So there were changes to those accounts that had never been seen before because those programs were operating very differently. So there was balances that had accrued during those times. So what we decided to do, we did a year ago, we did a really in-depth look about these accounts and what they could sustain, not just for 1 year or for 2 years, but for the next 4 years. Because we wanted to be responsible about balancing our budget on one-time funding sources, which is not a great idea and not a really good idea of how to do a budget. So Doug and I have talked about how to do this from 25, 26, 27, and 28. And as you'll see, I know there's a budget document that's online. You all have a copy here. It's on our website. But it really talks about looking responsibly over these accounts and what they can offset. And what does that word mean? What does offset mean? It means that there are things that those programs generate, more custodial overtime, more utility costs, capital purchases, that maybe instead of asking the town or the local budget to support, because before these programs could never afford these additional charges. So now, for the next couple years, let's look at what they can support. So this is year 2 of that spend down of these accounts. We've decided from these 3 accounts, they have balances that can support additional offsets. So this is where the $300,000 in fiscal 26 comes from. Wakefield Academy is going to, when they stay late, when they open early, we have to pay overtime for that. We're going to offset some of that with this $75,000, the utility costs. Some capital purchases. They bought some sheds. We're talking about some walkie-talkies, some radios. So we're looking to offset that from the program. Now, of course, those are things that can't happen all the time or more than once the spend down happens. But for now, we're looking to make that investment. Same with Doyle Preschool. We're looking to offset some of those charges and the facility rental account. When we have communities or programs that want to rent our space, it goes into a revolving account. But that those revenues usually have to just pay the custodial overtime. We're trying to look at what we can do to help maintain the buildings with some of that money. But again, it's really important to know that we're looking at this, but we're doing it over 4 years, because once this money is gone, we're not going to have these balances again. They're going to reassess and go back to what was happening pre-pandemic. So that's just really important, and I just wanted to stress, because I know there's a lot of questions about that, about well, why don't you just spend down every balance, but that wouldn't be responsible, because we want to make sure that we can sustain it moving forward.
So if I can add it as well, so one of the things we're doing, we're collaborating with the town, with our subcommittee and our FinCom liaisons, and we've talked about in this fiscal year, FY25, supporting the town by looking at, and this is, school committee will have to vote on this, but we've talked about paying for benefits through food service. So if those monies, the cost for those monies are $200,000+, I want to say they're 240, 242. Those monies in this fiscal year, if we can provide that, if those monies can go back to the town, that can become part of free cash, which again will help the town's reserves and will contribute to continuing with the bond rating that we have as we go into the next round of borrowing to continue the work on the high school. So that's for this fiscal year. We are also looking at that for the next fiscal year to continue to support as well. But I just want to be clear about conversation and questions that we might get around, are we collaborating? Has FinCom been involved? And the answer is yes. And we're working very closely with the town on this budget that we're presenting this evening.
So this is an overview, really. Fiscal 25 is the fiscal year we're in currently. So the local appropriation was $52,319,699. And what we're asking school committee to review and to possibly adopt at the next meeting is a local budget of $55,425,161. And as you can clearly see, this is due to an increase of contractual obligations from our 7 bargaining units. The $2.6 million that we talked about in the video and before, that's really what we're obligated to spend because of the teacher contract, and we're currently negotiating. There is a factor in here. We're hoping to have all those other 6 contracts hopefully resolved by the end of June, so we can start fiscal 26 with all of our 7 bargaining units in a new contract. And the luxury of that is what the video tried to stress. The luxury of having that is we know then what we can sustain and what we're locked into. It's like your budget at home, right? When you know what your known costs are and you know how to budget appropriately. We've really maintained contractual services. It went up slightly due to the new, as we said, the new transportation contract that came in. We just went out to bid, and we were out to bid for 30 days, and we had one vendor, NRT, who submitted a bid. So we're finalizing that contract with NRT. But supplies and materials, I mean, I want to applaud Kara and her team. What we're able to do in this district with just over $2 million for textbooks, educational supplies, and all of that is just quite remarkable, because when we do these new adoptions, really the grants that we're supporting all of our adoptions, I really don't know how else we would have been able to roll out all in one year like we did without those grants. So kudos to the curriculum team for that. But this is, as Doug said, a level, other than salaries, it's a level service budget. We're trying to maintain things that we've built here in Wakefield since the pandemic, since we had the influx of ESSER money, COVID relief funds, we had ARPA money, and we were trying to respond to the needs of our students and our populations, because we saw that the needs were greater than the revenue that we have. But now that we've built these programs with ML and special education, our base has adjusted for that, and we need to maintain what we've built. We've worked really hard to keep this budget. It's 5.94. We recognize that's under 6, but in order to maintain our personnel, which is 631 FTEs in this district, those are the known costs. Like we said before, there's no additional FTEs in this budget. We've reallocated from retirements We've only had a couple of people submit retirement papers, so we're trying to reallocate as we see fit. When we met with the principals this year, we really gave them a directive of, you know, live within your means, tell us what you need, but if we can reallocate, we were really open to having those conversations. And that's where we're at.
Covered a lot of ground. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes, sir.
Are the ML learners in our district, are they evenly distributed throughout the schools?
I can jump in there. So we have larger numbers. It's just kind of the size of the school, the size of the population of students. So Dolbear and Woodville have the majority of students, whereas Walton and Greenwood have a smaller number. But still, for the size of the building, it's still a caseload that needs to be supported. And then I would say across Galvin, we're around 30, around 20 at the high school.
Okay.
So it's not an even or an equal distribution, right? And so that's a critical part. And one of the things we're looking at is, you know, flexing schedules when possible to have, like Kara said, if we split big and small, you know, that would be a way for us to kind of manage those populations, right?
And as I mentioned, when we do that split with the new teacher of what Doug said, big and small, the bottom line number in terms of number of students and needs is pretty close between Woodville and Greenwood and Dolbear and Walton.
Because there's a lot to that, right? And so we don't want to overload it. It's not reasonable to take one teacher and overload their schedule and have someone have a disproportionately high or low schedule, right? So we're trying to create some parity or some kind of balanced kind of caseloads, like we do with special education, like we do with other programs. It's a good question.
Great.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say this was like, I think last year I said explain it to me like I'm 5, like a couple times, because sometimes it's a lot, right?
It is.
But I thought you did a wonderful job of explaining what each, like the circuit breaker, the revolving accounts, like it was just very cohesive and just very. Thank you. I do have a question, and maybe it's not an appropriate time because you said you were going to talk about it later about the federal government and like federal funding of grants, and you know, I know that some of the curriculum is grant funded, but is that state grants? Is that federal?
These are
Is
state grants.
They're state
not
grants.
federal
Okay.
grants.
Okay.
One-time state grants
One-time
that are kind
state
of behind
grants.
us now.
Okay.
Our federal grants are entitlement grants.
Okay.
So it funds paraprofessionals from the special education IDEA grant, and we have a preschool grant that funds one paraprofessional at the Doyle.
Okay.
And then the other federal entitlement grant is Title I, that helps reading services at our Title I schools. But those are all based on, they're called entitlements because of our demographics, so
Right.
it's basically what you're entitled to because of our population.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of talk about at the federal level about what federal grants will look like moving forward.
Right.
And don't forget, food services is, some of those reimbursements are federal reimbursements too.
Right.
So if free meals goes away, what does that program look like? And if those reimbursements are cut.
So the
We don't have to get into that now if you don't want to. If you
Okay,
want to do
no.
other questions, I feel bad because I kind of skipped it to
let's
that
just
part.
rip
but
the Band-Aid
yeah.
off. No, I think, so just to kind of expand on that. So we are watching very closely what's happening in Washington in terms of executive orders or changes that are happening, changes at the federal Department of Education, you know, and how things might be shifting and going to other departments. You know, we learned today on our news feed that the USDA is holding a $1 billion payment for school food, right? That could impact food pantries, and as well as school food spending programs, right? We know that the state of Massachusetts gets some portion of their money, right, from the federal government. How could that affect us? It could affect not only us, but every district and municipality in the state. you know, we're controlling what we can control
Right.
while understanding that, you know, this is kind of I think this is, to be honest, I think this is the most competitive budget that we've put together, most comprehensive in regard to information that we've put together and been able to put together, because there's been so many stakeholders involved, right? And so we've also been kind of working, again, on collaborating very closely with the town. And, you know, Christine alluded to this a moment ago, you know, we have money in reserves for special education in our special education stabilization fund. We have not accessed that. But that represents, it's not different than free cash or the rainy day fund. That represents the town reserves. So we are, you know, trying to be thoughtful about really everything that we're doing and look at every penny that we're spending.
I just want to try from what this budget means. I think what we budgeted for, what the administration has put together, is a budget built on the knowns. There are a number of unknowns
Right.
that are there, but that's not
That's
on,
not anything that's going to
that isn't
affect
on this
this.
page,
Right.
right? So
That's-
there's
okay.
only so much that we can do to sort of weather
Right.
that storm. I would say, sort of in preparation for that, or being ready for things like that, or things like not spending down the food
Right.
service revolving fund all in one sort of fell swoop, having it be a measured thing leaves you a buffer and puts in some protections for if that landscape shifts at all.
Yes.
And maybe when, you know, Christine initially put this up 2 years ago. No, we're in year 2, right?
Right.
So anyway, when she started forecasting this, it was sort of be in that measured way so that we could still be ready for, you know, if anything happened. And it's not like she had a crystal ball that she would know where we would be sitting today. But I think we are in a better space to be able to, if food service does change, if that sort of
Yeah.
that free meal does, maybe we can perhaps lessen that burden on families within district because we have some reserves, you know, a little bit here, maybe have it be a softer landing if we,
Yeah.
but today what's in front of us is the knowns, the stuff
Yeah.
we do know, and we're being careful.
Yeah, we're really conscious of not increasing our user fees,
Mhm.
and we haven't done that. We've kept the athletic user fees level funded. Now again, as you know, everything is getting more expensive. So we're trying to hold off we don't want to pass that burden on to our families until we have to. Again, you know, everyone talks about meals are free, but it's first meal that is free. So if a kid is hungry and goes back for a second meal, that we have to charge for that. So we're trying to adjust about what those fees would be. Unfortunately, the way food services works is Dustin, who's our food service director, he gets notified from the state about what we're gonna get reimbursed per meal, but unfortunately, we don't know that till August.
Yeah, I
So
remember that,
we're
yeah.
trying to make a lot of assumptions about what we know, and it's March,
Mm.
so.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You
Thank
really
you.
did go through everything and explain
Thanks.
everything, I thought, really well.
I
So,
appreciate
thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin?
So when we look at the special education slide,
Yeah.
and it says 14% like rate of inflation, my question is that inflation purely the cost of tuition, or is that the cost of tuition and the cost of transportation to the district?
Just
Like,
tuition.
is it combining both, or is it just
No,
one?
just tuition only.
And is it just tuition, or is it tuition and added services, or are those all kind of lumped together?
It depends on the placement and what the services are. So often it is included unless it's something like a one-to-one aid, for example, it would be in addition to that. This is just purely tuition only.
So the transportation costs, I assume, have also gone up.
Yes.
Have they gone up at like the same rate as tuition? Or a
So-
similar rate?
So for our NRT contract, we're looking at probably a 10% increase.
Okay.
But for special ed, we use a lot of smaller vendors that we negotiate, but there's always an increase.
Yeah.
You know, it just varies from vendor to vendor.
And if the question is, are there pass-through costs, there are.
Yeah. And sorry, my last question.
Of course.
For the circuit breaker, I forgot the rules, but for the circuit breaker, that can be used for the tuition, but it can't be used for transportation? Is that true, or am I
Just
wrong?
tuition.
Okay, right, so we have to pay for all the out-of-district
Yes.
transportation.
Yes.
And the circuit breaker can't be used
No,
for
it's
that.
only out of district.
Okay.
tuition.
Thank you.
And circuit breaker actually comes in once we hit a cap, right? Isn't it? Isn't there a cap to
Yes,
what we
there's a
would pay?
threshold.
And then
Yeah.
circuit breaker is 72% over whatever is
Above
over that cap?
75%. So yeah, there's a threshold that the out-of-district tuitions need to meet per kid to qualify, and it's around 50,000. So if their tuition is underneath of that, they don't even qualify for circuit breaker at all. If it's above that, then it's 75% of the difference above the threshold to what the actual cost is,
Yeah.
roughly.
Thank you. Pete?
I don't have a question, more of a comment. Just to echo some of what Eileen was saying on the content. You know, there's three ways that anyone watching can consume this. They can watch the video, they can check out the PowerPoint, and they can also go to the website and they can get every piece of information available by clicking on the school business budget section. And this big book in front of Stephen is available in PDF format, and it has answers to any question that could be on your mind. So I do appreciate all the hard work you put in, Christine. There's really, I don't think there's any question somebody could ask that isn't answered. I mean, at the end of the day, you can look at it and you go, it's a big number, but it's a big number because we're providing living wages to our teachers and our other, and we're working to provide new contracts to the rest of our bargaining units and
Thank
staff.
you. Yeah, it's really those four cost drivers, right? Personnel, utilities, transportation, special education. I mean, those are our big cost drivers. And I think you'll find that in every school district in Massachusetts. We're all struggling. I'm on a listserv with other business administrators, and we're all, struggling with the same things because, we're negotiating right now with 6 bargaining units, and we want to pay our staff well, but you want to make sure you're doing it and then presenting a budget that you can afford. You can negotiate a fantastic budget, but then if you can't afford it and the town won't support it, then you're talking a very different conversation, which we don't want to have.
Yeah, and we've seen that in other districts in
We
the
really
Commonwealth.
have.
I mean, significant job cuts to deal with
Yep.
budgets that don't balance.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
All right. But I would just say I really appreciate all the work that you went into this. I'm seeing this as a transition. I feel like it's part of a trilogy because I just see like the amount of information that you've been putting out over the past few years has just been more and clearer and into, I wouldn't say like explain it like I'm 5, but it's clear, it's concise.
It's a quote from the office.
And people
okay.
and people can get to it. And so I think that's really helpful. I think it's, a couple things that I think about that it's worth sort of if people are taking notes is the idea that, so we talk about the pandemic and COVID, and while the federal monies have gone away, the impacts of that on our student population and our families are things that hit kids in their formative years, that the impact on their learning and their education was not going to be over in 3 years. It wasn't going to be done with the vaccine. It wasn't going to be done after that. It was something that was just going to carry on, and it carries on in waves. It depends when the students were sort of met with that sort of that social aspect and that impact of their learning. How that reverberates is different, whether they were in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and teachers are seeing it differently. The administration is having to pivot differently. And so that's why while these mechanisms went into place sort of during COVID to help support, they sort of morphed into continued support for that for the long game. They can't go away today because it will just drive down all of the students sort of in our district. And so I think of this as I think sort of bordering on 6% is, I think it was a number that's higher than some in the past, but I think it needs to be seen in the backdrop of a well-governed district. I think it's fiscally responsible. I don't think we're one of those districts where you're seeing the budget shortfalls or sort of the labor relationship issues that we saw when we were negotiating this contract. So I think we just partner well, and this is that piece of that, being able to sort of pay what we can afford and give teachers and educators and other staff in district everything that sort of we believe we can support, and being responsible with the monies that the town sort of allocates to us and feels that we're good stewards of. So I hope they feel that way again when we go in and ask for this budget in front of town meeting. I know you guys will go before town council, and we'll kind of go before FinCom, just to pitch it again. And I think I think the story kind of tells itself. I think this is a budget that's owed. There's no extra to it. It's just things that we need to pay for, and whether that's for our staff, whether that's for special education, whether that's for transportation, it's just things that we have to do. And so this is the price of doing business. What I will say is as being somebody on the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee, for people that don't know this, we've been meeting for months about this. We've met with our FinCom liaisons. They've had good pointed questions. There will be more of them as we move through. And it's good to hear their perspective on it, because we're one of those town budgets that the town doesn't have as much of a hand in sort of crafting and piecing together. We kind of are the line item veto folks for this. So I appreciate their questions. We're going to have a meeting with them on the 22nd of this month. I think Tom had mentioned before, where hopefully we get more FinCom folks to come to that. It'll be an open meeting like a regular Finance and Facilities Subcommittee meeting. But we won't be bookended like we are at a regular FinCom meeting, where we're sort of, I won't say rushed, they give us all the time that we need, but I feel like I like the idea of giving them the budget and having them sit with it for a week or two, kind of like we put stuff on the table, and then coming back to us with like really good questions, that them as being more financially brained than me, at least, maybe not Christine, but me. I like hearing sort of the questions that they have. So that'll be on the 22nd. I think we're having it at the Galvin, along with some other meetings that we're going to continue to have with FinCom and the normal meeting with them. Like I say, town council. So a step in the process. I appreciate all the work that went into this. Thank you all for all the component with the. I know that we have special needs under control in terms of the programming that you brought in house to be able to sort of offer things within district have sort of driven costs down for us while meeting the standards that we need to meet, like with our students and with our families. We're not doing it sort of on the cheap. We're doing it the right way. But being able to provide those services in our own community is a huge thing. So I appreciate how you've been able to sort of build out that matrix over the years and all the work that you've put into it. So it means a lot. Thank you. Anything else?
I think I just want to say thank you. The feedback that we've gotten from the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee and from our FinCom liaisons have contributed directly to this slide deck. You know, they had talked about at those meetings that we've had recently, talked about needing more information in special education. That's why Rosie's here. That's why we have slides dedicated to it. More information in regard to our MLs. That's why Kara's here and we're talking about it, right? And so we're really trying to provide all of the information that we can so that FinCom can get their questions answered and they can feel, they may not agree with all of it, but hopefully they'll be able to, say that they can provide favorable action or support the district or support the budget in that way. That's our goal, right? But I want to say thank you to the Finance Subcommittee and to Rosie and to Kara and especially to Christine, right? Because this is many, many, many months in the making. The video, the video is not easy to make, right? And so when you look at all of the parts of the whole and all the information that we've shared to kind of get that into a concise script and to be able to deliver that in 7 minutes is a little bit of a feat. And so I think that's kind of based on the good work that Christine has done with Dave Cartoon. And so, yeah. Any feedback that you have, we're certainly open to it. Thank you.
I would just remind everyone we are required by state law to have a public hearing before you vote. So we have that scheduled for a week from tonight. There will be a Zoom link. I believe it's up on our website now. We've also advertised it in the Wakefield item that please chime in next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock to discuss the budget. Anything that we are not focusing on that you want to alert us to, we're here to listen. Any feedback is appreciated. Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right. Moving on. Item number 9 is chair comments. I don't really have much. I always say I don't have much. I think I would just take this moment to highlight WEF. WEF this Friday is doing their annual spelling bee, which is amazing. And we always try to attend. We can't this year. We have a conflict, but I hope a lot of people are going. It's probably, yeah, the Science Olympiad trivia, it holds like a second place. WEF is just like, and Science Olympiad just pinch under. But both awesome. But WEF coming up, it's fantastic. Also coming up on April 16th is their celebration of learning, which is when they highlight sort of students, staff, just organizations that sort of touch the district or within the district. And it's just such an uplifting experience. I remember it being one of the first sort of public events that I attended after the pandemic, and it was like, it will always stick with me because it was such an uplifting experience. It's just a whole night of like optimism and highlights on all of the good things that are kind of going on in our district. Can never say enough good things about WEF and what they, how they partner and the stuff that they bring to our district. So I will leave that there. Item number 10 is subcommittee reports, finance and facilities. That would be Mr. Markham, but he is not with us tonight. Finance and facilities update pretty much would have just been the budget. So that was that. I don't think there's anything extra to add. So moving on would be labor and personnel, but Mr. Piscadlo isn't here. Or Dr. Piscadlo is, Kevin, do you want to give us an update or?
I don't think we've done anything since the last meeting. I don't think we've had another negotiation session with UC since the last meeting.
Okay, fair enough. You have one coming up next week.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Did you ask me the date right now? I'll check my phone.
It's going to be the 18th.
It's also
Oh,
a
you
week
got it.
from tonight. It's before the public hearing.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Anything else? No?
No.
Okay. Student services, Ms. Collard.
Just an update on the late start times. There was a survey that went out to staff, I believe, on March 5th, and then to the greater community and parents and community members and caregivers on March 6th. And then next week we have a meeting with the staff to review the survey results of the late start time. So more to come on that
Great.
when we go through that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe for our next meeting we can kind of give a readout on sort of on a pulse check.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Policy and communications, Ms. Davis.
We have not met. We have a bunch of work to do, and I have proposed a handful of days and times to our WEA president, Ms. Cummings, and she's working to check on availability for some of the leaders, so hopefully we can work through some of the open issues on a couple of the policies on the table.
Great. Thank you. Liaison reports, if any. Seeing none. I'm not really a liaison, but I want to mention the food pantry. The food pantry recently put out a Sign Up Genius. They have little food pantries all around Wakefield. They're at 4 of the major churches, like the Methodist, I think on Vernon, the Baptist Church, maybe First Congregational, and I know there's one in front of Town Hall.
And Blessed Sacrament down in
And
Greenwood.
Blessed Sacrament, okay. Thank you. So the Sign Up Genius is if you want to kind of adopt a small food pantry box for a week. And so when I looked at the Sign Up Genius, there wasn't a ton of people signed up. So I would just say folks should maybe look it up. You can look it up on the Wakefield Food Pantry's website. They have links there. And it's just easy. Just go when you do your weekly grocery shop, pick up a few extra things, maybe just drop them in the box on your way home. It's a nice way to sort of help out. I know they do so much work, and if they didn't need the help, they wouldn't ask for it. So hopefully a few more folks can sign on. Just another good thing to do for the community. I think that was it. I did maybe want to say thank you to Jason Pavey and to the administration at the high school for allowing us, and Kara for allowing school committee members to come and listen to the Holocaust survivor with the students last week. It was incredibly powerful, and as much as I, just as an individual, I really appreciated hearing her story, I was really sort of moved by the students' interaction with her kind of after the talk, after the event. It definitely resonated with them, and having that be available to a number of our students in that setting. I know it wasn't everybody, and I know it was because it can be overwhelming to be in front of that many kids, but it seemed like a really good group. They were nothing but respectful and quiet and engaged. It was just, it was a very moving sort of thing to witness. So I appreciate being invited to that, and I'm thankful that we can bring that to our students. So thank you for doing that.
Can I just add to that? I think we want to thank Rabbi Brooke for bringing this to us. And so without him initiating, reaching out to us, I don't know that we would have had that opportunity. And so really appreciative of his efforts in that space.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so future dates and agenda items. Public hearing for the budget will be March 18th on Zoom, 7 o'clock. Our next in-person school committee meeting will be here on the 25th at 7 with a Zoom option. And does anyone have any future agenda items? I know you're probably thinking we're getting out too early. If you want to have us hang out here for a little while longer, you love the camaraderie, feel free to give some agenda items. We can talk about a few more things. No? All right, all right. I'll think of some.
Is the public hearing in person?
It is on Zoom.
I think we have a calendar invite.
You can be in person.
I think I sent it.
In person, in front of your camera.
It's also on the website.
Is it not on the calendar?
It's on the calendar.
Okay, great.
Yes, no, yes, yep, it's on the calendar. We have it in the calendar.
Yes, I know if we were meeting.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Here? No.
Yeah.
That would be hard for negotiations at Galvin. then. Okay.
be at Galvin, Kevin.
Yeah. Okay. Number 12, school committee comments, if any. No, it's a quiet group. Kevin and Tom are going to feel like they missed out. All right, seeing none. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Yeah, move that the school committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, March 11th, 2025.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.